Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Jonas Roach, and I am the news editor here at the Architects newspaper. I'd like to welcome you all to the Biophilia and Bio-Inspired Design live webinar, a CE Strong webinar series powered by the Architects newspaper. This webinar is sponsored by ICG Italia. This program is registered with the AIA CES for continuing professional education. Questions related to specific materials, methods, and services will be addressed at the conclusion of this presentation. This webinar is recorded and can be easily replayed when re-registered on the same webinar registration page. Please allow 7 business days to process certificate of participation and AIA credit reporting for this presentation. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, Tina Bianchi. With over 4 decades of dynamic sales experience across diverse industries, including beauty, private label, advertising, and spatial design, Tina brings a unique blend of creativity, technical expertise, and client-focused strategy to every project she touches. Since joining Iris Ceramica Group in 2004, Tina has become a cornerstone of the company's success in the U.S. market, contributing to high-profile architectural and design projects with her deep knowledge of ceramic and porcelain surfaces. Tina's portfolio includes award-winning collaborations such as the Stanford CAM project with HOK, the San Diego Courthouse with SOM, and the London Tube Stations with Bechtel, where she led the custom replication of heritage tiles across 9 stations. Her work on the Oakland City Center, Doha Airport, and San Francisco International Airport further showcases her ability to integrate innovative slab solutions into complex architectural environments. Known for her technical acumen and design sensibility, Tina excels at bringing concepts to life, whether through custom displays, material solutions, or aesthetic enhancements. Her background in fashion and design informs her approach to presentation and detail, while her problem-solving mindset ensures that every challenge is met with creativity and precision. Beyond her professional achievements, Tina is a passionate educator and creative spirit. She has taught off-road spin classes for over 26 years, studied ballet and modern dance, and authored a children's book inspired by her beloved French bulldog. Her personal interests, from geology and cooking to classic cinema and fashion, reflect a lifelong curiosity and appreciation for beauty in all its forms. Tina's guiding philosophy is simple yet powerful. When given the choice, choose kindness. This ethos shines through in her work, her relationships, and her enduring commitment to excellence. Remember to please leave your questions for the speaker in the Q&A button found at the bottom of your Zoom window. Without further ado, Tina Bianchi.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to be able to present a topic that I'm very much passionate about. And here we go. Before we get started with the CEU, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about the company that I represent, which is ICG Italia. This year, we decided to unify forces. We have always been known across the United States as Eurowest or Trans Ceramica, but we decided to unify worldwide under the same recognition, the same name, so we would alleviate any confusion in the field as ICG Italia, still owned by our powerful Iris Ceramica group. And the same brands that you all know and love that we have been manufacturing and representing are all on the right side of the page. We still represent those brands as well worldwide. We were founded in 1961 by Dr. Romano Minozzi. We are the largest and most innovative porcelain manufacturer in the world. We are in 5 continents and over 100 countries. We have 60 showrooms worldwide, and we have 6 factories around the world, 4 in Italy, 1 in Germany, and 1 in the United States. We are a woman's leadership company with his daughter, Federica Minozzi, as our CEO. She is a very powerful woman known as the Queen of Ceramics. She's won prestigious awards through Forbes with her environmental sustainability ethics, and her core values have never changed from sustainability, innovation, and excellence and quality. Not only do we hold every certification in manufacturing as well as in product that you can imagine that exists in the porcelain industry. We use 100% natural minerals when we produce our materials. We produce them with heat and water. We have no harmful VOCs or chemicals. We are respectful not only to nature, but also to humanity. We are a member of the Green Building Council. We are also the first and the only porcelain manufacturer that has actually developed a 100% green hydrogen-powered factory. We use our 100% green hydrogen to produce our porcelain slabs. We use sun, wind, sea waves, and excess water that we collect to fuel our kilns. We've also collaborated for the third year in a row with MIT. This is an amazing collaboration. MIT actually builds environmental hubs around the world, and this is to help implement effective climate practices with 76 countries. And we have renewed that relationship for the third year in a row. Today, the reason why we're all here, we start the CEU on biophilia and bio-inspired design. This presentation is copyrighted. As Dan has mentioned, it is AIA as well as IDCEC credited. And today's learning objective is for you to understand the importance of biophilia, know how to apply biophilia to your design and architectural strategies, understand what materials and what elements embody biophilia, and how to understand the use and the frequency of fractals. And of course, color. One of the most powerful hidden languages is what the color's saying that you choose, what the message is for your clients and what message they want to get through. Biophilia. The importance of biophilia is to connect people back to nature. Nature's been a part of our lives since we've began as man. We've used nature not only for healing properties, to just give us a benefit of physical and more healthier well-being. And connecting back to nature connects to improve the quality of our lives, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional. The reason why porcelain is such an amazing material when it comes to biophilic design is that it's the bond of earth and fire. Earth and fire are two powerful natured elements, and these exist in porcelain today. So if we take biophilia, the word, and we break it down, bio means of life, nature, living, and philia means the love of or the like of. So putting the two together gives you biophilia, or the love of living things, or the love of life. And the concept behind this is to link us back to nature, where we all began physically, cognitively, and emotionally, because we're not just in nature, but all of us are actually nature. So in 1984, it all began with Professor Ulrich. He decided to conduct a study in a hospital. So he took some of his patients and he had them observe in rooms that had no nature inspiration anywhere. There are no windows to look out to nature. If you saw a window, it was a brick wall or a cement wall. He didn't have any plants, no pictures, no paintings, nothing that brought in any form of nature. He also had the same number of patients recover in different rooms that had inspiration of nature, such as either paintings or sculptures or windows with a view, or plants were brought in. And what prompted all of this biophilic direction was the results from this one particular study. The patients that recovered in rooms that had nature recovered faster and actually used less pain medication. And that prompted the whole start of biophilia. Because as our national natured evolutionary inheritance of people, as we've grown in humanity, we used to connect to nature, use nature for survival skills. We looked at ecological cues. We looked at the weather, the plants, animals, the soil, the leaves, the oceans, what nature was giving us to help us survive. Today, we have evolutionized our ways to not look at nature anymore, but to rely on technology for survival. So today, we rely on our computers, we rely on our cell phones, we rely on our television sets, automobiles, things of this nature. And as we evolutionize to use these technologies, we are slowly slipping away from our core desire, and that's the connection back to nature. The one area that's depleted nature or disrespected nature, I should say the most, would be technology. It's kind of a little bit of an oxymoron, but today we've evolutionized to really depend on it. In fact, as an architect and a designer, how effectively can you do your job without your computer? And for all of us, what happens when we forget our cell phone? We sheer panic, right? It's as if we've left a limb behind. We've grown to really rely and need these devices. And as an architect and a designer, you have a very important role today. It's probably one of the most important roles to exist. You have the power of choice. So you can choose manufacturers that are respectful to nature and produce product that's respectful or not. You may not be able to choose every aspect of any project to be completely respectful, whether it be in the manufacturing or the product itself. I think that's an unrealistic thought process, but you can make those choices where they exist, because if this is your powerful play, you may actually contribute a verse. So this was our existence. This was our home. This is our dwellings. This was our prospect and refuge. We had surrounded with something that allowed us to feel safe with the strength of stone or rock or hard surfaces, but we always kept an opening to give us freedom, freedom to respond to threats or freedom to respond to opportunity. And this is how we used to live. And then we decided to grow a little bit more permanent in our structure, a little bit more permanent in how we lived, a little more complex. We grew even further complexity, further permanency. Even in our concrete jungles, we still have the need and the desire to connect to nature, which is a very good thing, a very healthy thing. Because as we develop our glass houses and skyscrapers, it's important that we don't alleviate or remove nature from the equation. Because as we slowly separate ourselves from the healing of nature, we actually will increase the demise of our mindset and our mental health. So connecting to nature is very important for us. And as long as we incorporate that in our design and our architectural intent, the healthier our society will actually be. So if we think about hard surfaces, these are incredibly important aspects to biophilia and bio-inspired design. The reason being is hard surface of all types, such as porcelains or stones, these actually give us a sense of safety, a sense of strength and empowerment to us. And they're very important in that aspect of biophilia and bio-inspired design. These materials that are forward thinking, such as porcelains, they're known as bio-inspiration or biomimicry. You can also achieve bio-inspiration through various aesthetics, various textures, various colors, various shapes, angles, and functions. These also are monumental for our inspiration with our design as we move forward to create these healthy environments. So if we take a look at forward-thinking porcelain can actually today with the technology embody just about any material. Whereas the earth is made up over 2,000 minerals, it chooses 12 to 13 to create stone. And in these 12 to 13, the same minerals are used to create porcelain. Whereas in creating stone, it is more disrespectful for nature, depleting nature's art, and a harsh process. The relevance of porcelain today is much more relevant to us today. Just like a rotary dial phone wouldn't be considered relevant to make a call today, a cell phone or a watch. Same thing with porcelain versus stone. It has the same DNA, but produced, manufactured, and performing much more relevant to how our needs are today. There's no need to seal it. There's no chemicals, no VOCs. The main minerals in porcelain are those main minerals that determine integrity and durability, and actual blends and mix, such as with stones, and those are quartz, feldspar, and kaolins. So the hard surfaces and structures that can get produced in our forward-thinking porcelain today that can embody stone can give us a sense of strength, a sense of safety, a sense of sturdy. And our inspiration of deserts give us a sense of warmth, gives us a sense of sand, things that are warming, calming. And of course, the inspiration of water, which is nourishment from flora to fauna, is also a great inspiration and embodied also in various ways to porcelain today. My favorite, of course, is the precious and semi-precious stones. This is the beauty to the beast, the yin to the yang. This is the ultimate in balance. And with forward-thinking porcelain, you can take something incredibly luxurious that may not have its durability or performance power, but of course, with the forward-thinking bio-inspired porcelain, it now can be created in such a durable way that it can also have not only the beauty and the fragility with its aesthetic, but also provide that durability and strength for performance. Bio-inspired materials today can embody textures, colors, durability, and strength, and be resilient to thermal and moisture resistance. So what actually happens in biophilic environments? Well, not only do you increase your well-being, your productivity, and your creativity, but the whole concept behind this is to actually start feeling healthier, more connected to the environment. And these large companies, which of course I understand they're all tech companies, and I'm just really thrilled that they're giving back, and they have adopted biophilic natural design implementation to these large businesses that they embody. And it's about having their employees be healthy, be productive, be heightened in creativity, be happy where they are, to alleviate occupational burnout, such as the Apple campus. This is a wonderful ring-shaped institution or business, which is a very powerful shape with fractals. And they've planted orchards in the inside as well as plants surrounding the outside. This entire building is made all of glass. So wherever the employee is, walks, sits, goes, they have an experience of nature at every moment. And Google St. John's Terminal, which is the largest real estate venture to date at $2.1 billion, is also slated to be the largest biophilic entity to exist. Every floor surrounded in glass. From one side of the building, views of the Hudson River. On another side, every floor is planted with indigenous plants and indigenous flowers. And of course, Microsoft's treehouse. This is interesting because this set of offices were Rainier Douglas fir trees, and they decided to build their conference rooms directly into the Douglas fir trees, creating tree houses for conference rooms. And these are ways that their employees and their staff have a way to be constantly consumed with the healing powers of biophilia. So if we think about 1984, we had Dr. Ulrich, who started this whole direction and concept. It jumps into 1992 with a concept called forest bathing. In Japan, at the Center for Environment and Field Sciences, they decided to take 420 subjects. And in forest bathing, you spend a long length of time in a forest. And they spent 1 month existing in this forest. And after the 1 month, they tested the subjects and found that cortisol levels were decreased, as well as heart rate. And if anyone's familiar with cortisol, cortisol is something that we produce, and we produce large amounts of it when we're stressed, when we're having strokes, when we're having anxiety attacks, when we're having heart attacks. So lowering the cortisol is actually a healthier mindset and a healthier way to exist and to live. And that was one of the wonderful aspects of the forest bathing and being treated with nature. And then it went on to Harvard, the Department of Environmental Health. And when people asked me if I thought biophilia is just a concept or a gimmick, when I did my research and saw that Harvard jumped on board, that kind of put that out the window. Harvard's a very serious university, and when they take on something, they take it on with validity. And they took on biophilic environments and started doing their testing. And what they found is it reduces blood pressure, systolic and diastolic. But my favorite is that they realized that biophilic environments actually can increase short-term memory. So if anyone knows anyone that is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, the short-term memory is the first to go. And to me, it's a game changer to know that we have the ability to actually increase that, because anybody who's losing memory would do anything to hold on to their memory an extra day, an extra week, an extra month, or hopefully an extra year. There's nature-driven therapies that have always existed: exposure to nature, greenhouse tours, planting activities, community gardens. There's nature walks, nature hikes. All of these have existed today. And if you want to apply these biophilic entities to your design and architecture, it is broken down in a group of strategies and areas. First, we're going to cover the strategies. There are three. It's direct, indirect, and the experience of place. With these strategies, you can reach one, two, or all three. The experience of place is pretty easy. That's you physically taking yourself there. You're actually on the nature hike. You're at the ocean. You're in the community garden. The direct is also pretty easy. You're actually taking nature and actually placing it inside by plants or animals. You're actually directly taking nature and actually placing it inside. Where you as an architect and designer really come into place is with the indirect experience. And this is where you take the forward-thinking materials, the bio-inspired materials, the biomimicry, and you actually bring that into the project and into the space. You can do that through images, through pictures, paintings, any materials that have been forward-thinking, where they have transformed themselves from one form of nature into another form of nature, such as wool, leather, wood, porcelain, clay, and various stones. You can also bring in some of this inspiration through textures, through aged finishes, and also the geometrics, or the shapes and the angles. This again is all referred to as bio-inspiration and biomimicry. So in our forward-thinking porcelain today, we have an advantage because the technology has grown to a way that you can actually create your own textile. Whether you want to create an orchid garden or a tropical garden, that choice is up to you, and it can be done. You can also create your own urban garden and not have to worry about depleting water in any of the areas that are suffering from drought. In fact, if you build your own urban garden this way, you never have to worry about depleting water, and your plants and flowers are always in bloom. However, if you're somebody who prefers color, you can also choose to add color. This is a great example of definitely two strategies and a possible third. The forward-thinking porcelain that has been used to create a stone feel of security and safety is what you see on the ground and up the walls. You physically are in the strategy of place, being right there in nature, by the pool, by the trees, by the mountains, by the view. But this forward-thinking porcelain transitions itself inside, so you have an indirect strategy that also gets achieved. What I can't see on the inside is if anyone brought any plants in, or if there's a pet running around, and then that would have covered the direct response as well. So here, it's a definite two strategies with a possibility of the third. This is a great example of a definite two strategy biophilic direction. You have the forward-thinking porcelain on the ground as well as the wall, embodying the countertop. And of course, you have the forward-thinking wood that is coming out as an actual table, and then the wonderful shapes of the fractal circular motion of the chairs, the stools, the lighting, and then of course the direct, where the plants have been brought inside, as well as the view from the windows. So once you've determined your strategies, whether you've hit one, two, or all three, it is important that you understand the areas. And unlike the strategies where you can hit one, two, or three, it's open. The areas are not. They're very strict. It's four, and all four must be hit. If you remove one of them, unfortunately, you remove the benefits of biophilic design. So we're going to go through these four so you can understand what they mean and how to apply them. The first one is prospect and refuge. The second is organized complexity. The third would be modes of mystery. And of course, the fourth is the use of patterns and fractals. So prospect and refuge. This one is very interesting for us as people because we gravitate to this. We need this. Our minds are the healthiest when we embody prospect and refuge. So what that actually means is back in the day, of course, this is how we achieved our prospect and refuge. We felt safe, we felt secure, we felt strong with our surrounding walls, but we also had the freedom of choice to obtain opportunity or to protect ourselves against threat. So prospect and refuge goes a little bit further. It's important that you embody both. If you are in prison, you have a lot of refuge, but you have no prospect, not so healthy. If you're homeless, you have a whole lot of prospect, not so much refuge. Again, not ideal. The two together provide the mind of being safe and secure and protected, which is important for us, and also to feel that we have freedom of choice. And that is a very important combination for us as people, because what we surround ourselves with actually helps the direction of our lives and how we take direction. And it is important that we connect with our spaces. It's important that we connect where we see clear and we understand where we are. And that's all about prospect and refuge, connecting, understanding, and in a way, taking a creative direction in our mindset, in our lives. This is another great example of a modern cave, so to speak, where you have your secure walls, but you still have an opening for freedom, for choice, for opportunity. This is another modern cave. This actually enters in the element of fire, very powerful, the warmth of wool. So here you still have your surrounding walls, but you still have openness to see, to react, to feel free, to make choice. And this modern cave brings also in another entity of biophilia, which is light. So organized complexity, I found this one to be incredibly interesting. This one was probably the most interesting for me to understand. We are very organized people, and we have a very complex way that we are built. And nature has the same organized direction and the same complexity. The similarities are absolutely outstanding. Where we as people have a nervous system, a pulmonary system, and a circulatory system, nature has leaf capillaries. They have plant seeds, leaf arrangements, root systems, tree branches, and tributaries. So the similarities are very baffling to me. We seem to be one more elevated aspect. But if you take and break down here, the branches and the roots of these trees are similar to our bones and our nervous system. And if you take a look at these leaf capillaries, they're similar to how we have veins and we have our own capillaries. And of course, the tributaries could be relatable to arteries. So when we look at organized complexity and how we bring it to our design scope, it is important that we have an organization. As people, we need things to feel organized for who we are. It may seem messy to someone else, but for you, it's organized where you know where everything is, and there's peace in that. If somebody comes into your space and messes it all up, there's nothing more creating anxiety or anger. So we need to feel that we have ownership of our space, we understand our space, and we can navigate in our space. But because we're also people who get bored very easily, we need a little bit of interest and complexity to how we surround ourselves, to keep ourselves in interest. And that we do with our design. We do it with fractals, geometric, spatial understanding, and hierarchies. These are three great examples. We have the Taj Mahal, very organized, but the closer you get to this structure, the more complex you start to see every detail. The arches in the Colosseum, very organized, but very complex. And then the columns in the Parthenon, very organized and again, incredibly complex. So if we think of the third aspect to biophilia, it's important that you bring in a mode of mystery. Nature does this beautifully. Nature brings us mystery with weather, right? With plants, with animals, with soil, with trees. We see the difference in ocean, the shapes. So mystery in nature is a very easy to see with the changing of times, weather, and plant life and the activity of the animals. Is if this hike, in a way, if you look at this as nature's mode to mystery, you could do this hike today, next week, next year, and I promise there'll be elements that are different, a little more mysterious. Hear what lies beyond the mist, what's to the left, what's to the right. This is nature's mystery. So how can we bring this to architecture and design today? We do that with light. We do it with lighting, we do it with shapes, and we do it with textures. We bring in a sense of wonder and direction through lighting and texture and shapes. So this is a great example because you actually can see the lights that are actually guiding you and directing you up the stairs. What's up on that next floor? It's intriguing. It's complex. It's a mode of mystery. We want to know what's up there. And that's how we can do it with our architecture and design. Some of the materials that are creating biophilia are all bio-inspired materials that have to do with textures, of course, and different types of ways of forward-thinking materials. And these would be some of the elements in architecture, which would be more your geometries, your fractals, your curves, your circles, your angles, patterns. So this is a good example of the biophilia in the material standpoint, where you have the forward-thinking porcelain to embody a travertine-like stone, but you have an organized complexity, of course, with the intricate pattern of the fabric. You do have your prospect and refuge with your walls, as well as your opportunities to see and freedom of choice, but your mode of mystery is what's behind that wall, what's through that door. So you've already incorporated a lot of these elements here and brought in, of course, some beautiful inspiration with the plant onto the wallpaper. And this is a great example on the architectural aspect with the shapes of the curves and the circular motions of the tables, the chairs, the light fixtures. These are all bringing in certain angles and certain shapes that are important with fractals in biophilia. And of course, the forward-thinking porcelain with the veins that you see on the floor as well as the wall, creating lines and direction. And of course, my favorite part of biophilia actually is the fractals. And if you are a math person, this is probably going to be your favorite as well. So what are fractals? Well, fractals are patterns for our brain. It's how our eyes and our brain actually communicate. Fractals are patterns that can range over magnifying scales. So these fractals or patterns can be continual, consistent, and can range in geometric shape. And if we think about fractals, this is how we actually have the quantifiable results of biophilia. This is how you measure the response. This is what makes it quantifiable. You can actually measure the brain with dimensional value, and they measure these on an EEG. And an EEG also measures seizure, it measures dementia, it measures epilepsy. This is a device that can actually measure dimensional value and how the brain responds. So your quantifiable results or your cognitive responses are responsible from the fractals. This is what gives the reduction in stress. This is what improves your cognitive function. This is what enhances your creativity. This is what actually takes you to your happy place. So fractals are important to biophilia as your lungs are important to the human body. If you take a look at this picture, one half is a tree stamp and one half is a fingerprint. Now, there's no two fingerprints or two tree stamps that will ever be the same. And it's amazing just how similar our organized complexity really is. We are an elevated form of nature, but we are all nature. So when we talk about fractals, the fractals in biophilia come from the golden ratio in nature. So biophilic fractals come from the golden ratio in nature. The golden ratio in nature comes from the Fibonacci sequence. In the Fibonacci sequence, there are 4 fractals. In the golden ratio of nature, there are 3. There are exact fractals, there are statistical fractals, and there are dynamic fractals. So an exact fractal is a fractal that is based on repetitive patterns, such as whorls of a pine cone, the swirls in a conch shell, petals on a flower. These are all repetitive, but of magnifying scale. And statistical fractals will actually start to enter in a form of randomness to them, such as your mountain ridges or your tree branches. And your dynamic fractals actually act in or address in a boost of time. So a dynamic fractal would be the flames on the fire or the waves on the ocean or the clouds that are in the sky. So the complexity on how you can measure these fractals is through dimensional value. Now, we evolutionize our ability to perceive and absorb dimensional value. But the low dimensional values that rank anywhere from, a 0 to a 1.3, your mid-dimensional values would be your 1.4 to 1.7, whereas your higher dimensional values really are between a 1.8 and a 2.0. So if you have minimalistic sparse patterns, those would be considered low dimensional value. And your rich, more intricate patterns, of course, would have a higher dimensional value. And we do definitely evolutionize our way of being able to understand and to absorb the fluency of them. And when you think about the patterns and how your eye and brain connect, it is milliseconds before you recognize something. So if you see a chair or a table, your eye is moving in a fractal-like motion, your brain is moving in a fractal-like motion, and the two fractals connect milliseconds before you actually see it's a chair or a table. It is effortless for your human body, but that is how your brain and your eye vision actually communicate to see an object and identify that object. So there is a complexity, and we see them everywhere. The mid-D fractals, which really are found in nature, is your mid-D level. And if we look at these two examples of fractals, you see one on the left that is a more minimal, lower dimensional value. And the one on the right is going to be a more higher dimensional value with the intricate detail on the cabinet doors, as well as the flooring and the different areas that are brought into play, versus the one on the left that has very minimal aspect to it. So where nature only creates mid-D fractals, this is probably where the rubber meets the road. So anything you see in nature is a mid-D fractal. How all this makes sense is your brain is happiest, healthiest at mid-D fractals. So when your brain is focused on mid-D fractals, that is when all of your heightened creativity, problem solving, peaceful feelings, happy place, emotions, all of that take place. So the dynamic between the dimensional value is where you want to be is at that mid-D level. For example, if you as an architect have a very minimal design to your architecture, it is up to the partnership with you and the designer for the designer to kind of raise some of the complexity, raise it a bit in a higher dimensional value. So your low dimensional value, their high dimensional value meet in the middle and start to balance in a mid dimensional value for all these health benefits. And vice versa. If you're an architect with very high intricate design, then that designer comes in and partners with you and brings it down with more minimalistic approach. So again, your design project or your design scope can meet in the middle at that mid-D level. That is where happiness is. That is where all the magic is. And that is where you can achieve all of the health. and the heightened sensitivity and the heightened cognitive functions. And it's all about us creating that. You know, you find if you have a very intense job, let's say, and your mind is constantly being absorbed with high dimensional value, very complex things, you as a person gravitate towards simple things on your free time because your brain naturally wants to find that mid-D level. And if you have a job that you feel is boring and it doesn't challenge you at all, then in your personal life, you gravitate to dramatic things, whether you realize it or not, whether it be through people or through experiences. You're trying again to bring up so you can meet in the middle. So this is a very important concept, and partnering with the high and the low to create that mid-D level. The stress reducing fractals are actually known as, of course, the biophilic fractals, and they have a frequency that brings on stress reduction. It helps with a heightened concentration. It helps with mental fatigue and occupational burnout. So if you find you have roadblocks in your mind some days, sometimes to take a few minutes to just, you know, take a look at something that's going to help give you some therapy to your mind, whether it be a walk or a scenery. These things can actually help you find your happy place and help you be more in that mid-D level so you can find those blocks being removed and lifted. But as the power that you have with fractal fluency and biophilic fractals to improve your mindset, utilizing them in unnatural ways, you can actually create negative responses such as migraine headaches and stress-related illness and anxiety. So these are really important. In fact, a lot of important entities such as NASA, they adopt biophilic for their astronauts. It's really important that their astronauts are surrounded before they go up in space with whatever's going to keep their minds as healthy as possible. And we found that in this country today, we spend $300 billion on stress-related illness. And it has been proven with EEGs and proven with studies that you can actually reduce stress-related illness up to 60%. That's 60, 60. That means $180 billion instead of going to the pharmaceuticals for medications for all these new stress-related, anxiety-ridden issues. We would be able to alleviate that, and those funds could be used to actually do good. They could possibly feed hungry or affordable housing or just help the country be where it needs to be. So these are really important aspects to understand, that we want to really connect with nature, bring about these healthy responses, and not risk a future of disconnect. I came across an article that I thought was really important, and it was about longevity. It was in a wellness section of this magazine, and they were commenting that as much as diet and exercise and movement was incredibly vital for health and longevity, what is starting to actually be more predicative of longevity over physical health is mental health. And this is becoming a lot more important, that a healthier mindset is far more predicative of longevity than a physical health. In fact, researching the blue zones, you'll find that, you know, these zones have more longevity in their people than anywhere else in the world. And their diets all have differences. They are natural foods, of course. They all get some exercise, but again, their exercise is different. And what ends up happening is the one thing that is constant is the communal approach. So if we look at fractals in nature, it is all about the automatic visual processes. We explain that we need the direction, we need the geometry of it all. And this is interesting because on the left is the actual building. On the right is a Photoshop adding some color and some shape. So when they went ahead and put the subjects on an EEG to see what happened with the eye movement, what they noticed is the eye never saw the actual building on the left. The eye went directly across the street. Whereas if they made some adjustments, all the eye saw was the actual building. So some of your clients might want to be seen. They want to flourish. So it may be to the advantage for you to have a directive that makes the eye gravitate to those buildings. So again, you've got a minimal approach with very few fractals on the left, one that gives it a little bit more interest. So here is a mid-D fractal in architecture where you have the circular shapes used to perfection. You've got your direct and your indirect. And of course, being with the views, you're probably a little bit of place here, but you also have just enough of the forward-thinking materials of the porcelain as well as the wood to create that mid-D fractal for your mind. And here's a much more minimalistic approach where you really just have the veins of the forward-thinking porcelain and the lines of those shelving. This one actually is more of a higher dimensional value where you have the bookcases to the left. And then, of course, you have a lot going on with the mosaic, the movement of that forward-thinking porcelain with the lights and the shapes. And of course, color. Color is very, very powerful. We use it in many ways and forms. So color is a way for us to set moods, to communicate. Color is a way to make things pretty. It makes things provide direction, and it actually is a form of expression. So the response to color is objective and subjective. Objective is really physics and light and angles with your eye, whereas subjective really draws on past and personal experiences and memories. So when you put the two together, that really is the human response. So what goes into an emotional response could be a subconscious inherent response. It could be a personal experience or a learned response, or it could be your culture or your language. So is the color that you are using in design giving the message that your client would like to project? So these colors, we all know that white means purity and clean, red means energy, blue means calming and relax. So colors bring about a form of communication. For instance, with transportation, we all universally know red is stop and green is go. But does anyone know why orange, red, and yellow are used in a lot of fast food? It's because they want people to come in with energy. They want them to be happy. They want them to order food, but they want them to get out. They don't want anyone to stay for very long. Whereas with a spa, everything's blue and white. It's pure, it's relaxing. They want you to stay as long as you can and add another experience and another treatment as much as you can. So the color can also help in that aspect. You can go into some buildings and want to stay forever with its design and its color, or there's some buildings where you can't wait to leave. So this is important to know. But green is a color that we perceive more than any other color that exists. It is the most universal color of balance. It keeps you wakefully relaxed, and it goes with every color. And you see that because it doesn't matter what color the flower is, it always works with the leaf. So it's a great color for waiting rooms because it calms the nerves. It's great for office space. You're wakefully relaxed. You are calmly productive. Blue is the next most calming color and the most widely used and balanced color. And it gives us a sense of relax and calm. And part of that is due to the fact that the sky is blue. It'll always be blue. If it's not blue today, it's blue tomorrow. If it's not blue tomorrow, it's blue next week or next year. There's something calming and assuring in faith. And blue with the sky, we don't ever hesitate to ever worry that it's ever going to be blue again. We just know that it will be. And blue is often used where we have wet areas, where there's water, for inspiration. And the combination of blue and green, a sky with wonderful landscape, always works. But if you can't decide, there is teal and turquoise. And my hat goes off to the marketing excellence and Tiffany's, who designed these turquoise little boxes that even if the box is empty, everyone's happy to receive one to this day. So in summary, your color actually has superpowers. These are superpowers that can actually create direction and impulse and response. Waldo Emerson states, cause and effect, means and ends, seed and fruit. So the effect lies in the cause, the end is justified in the means, and the fruit is already in the seed. So all you need to do is apply for your result to be a certainty, because we can all be part of a solution or part of a problem. And if this is your powerful play, you may contribute a verse. And what verse do you want that to be? Today's presentation is referenced. Is there any questions regarding biophilia? Is there any questions?
Thank you, Tina. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A window. If folks have
Okay.
questions, I welcome them to add them
I,
there.
I do see about 11, 12 in the chat box. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
let's start with, can we start with Tracy's? Tracy asked, could you talk a bit more about how circles play a part of fractal design?
Yes. The circular motion is a motion of unity. So again, where I talked about, and this is kind of a stretch, but if you think about it, if I talk about the community aspect of the blue zone, right? There's something about unity. There's something about camaraderie. So the circular motion is an infinity. It's a unity. It gives you a sense of continual, which gives us peace. No one wants to know that this is ended. They all like this continual motion. And that's one of the aspects of that circular dynamic. And it is an important shape in fractals, and it's becoming important today in a lot of graphics.
There's a question from Aaron. What colors would you not recommend?
you know, every color I recommend, because every color has a message and a voice. So my question for you would be, what message and what voice, and what do you want to convey? What secret communicative direction or response do you want your space or your area to bring? So if you want to bring energy, of course, there's red. If you want to bring calm, of course, there's the obvious blue. You can combine various different colors together. But I think the main question is, what message do you or your clients want their project to speak?
Great. Tina, do you see more questions in the webinar chat?
I see in the chat box about 18. Did you want me to roll that down, or do you see those 18?
Okay, I see another one in the Q&A box. How can we apply dynamic biophilia to architecture and interior architecture, which are mostly static?
So when you apply your dynamic or your biophilic directives, it really is a partnership. Sometimes there's an architect and there's a designer. Sometimes it's one. You really want your goal to be that mid-D fractal. So, the biggest and the easiest way to describe it is, have your cheat sheet on the areas. I think the strategies are pretty self-explanatory. You're either going to have an indirect response, which is going to be an area that you don't really have a window that's got this amazing view to capitalize off of. So you really are going to, of course, do the obvious, and that's bring in plants if you can, such as a living wall, or capitalize off of a view. But if you're going to actually do this architectural design technique, I think explaining to your clients, first of all, so it's not going to be stagnant, explaining why this directive approach is going to be beneficial. Because if they have a space where they want heightened creativity, cognitive function, no disconnect, no anxiety, no stress, they want everything elevated for performance and their employees to really be driven, then this is a concept to take on. So think about bringing everything to that mid-D level. So if you have a very simple directive from your client, you can interject some fabrics, finishes, patterns, angles, directives that can bring in a little complexity, and vice versa. And I hope that answered the question. If not, my email will be on the next slide when I say thank you. Everyone's welcome to shoot me an email if they have more questions that they would like to get addressed but don't get addressed due to our time. or if I need to elaborate on any further questions.
There's a question, isn't nature's beauty transforming, which makes our appreciation and therefore our interaction similarly dynamic?
Yes, yes, 100%. There's nothing that nature makes that is not going to be healing. So if you think about what nature does, is nature's always given us healing properties, whether it be through medicine of herbs back in the day or just embodying these therapies that are nature driven. And there's also communal therapies, community therapies, where you can join in and incorporate the two. So nature's always been there to provide us a sense of healing through the entire time of man, if not before, and it's there. And it's a simple way to get healing without, a pill that has side effects. There's illnesses that require medication. So I'm not saying, stop taking everything, because there are medical illnesses that do require your medications. And of course, that's between you and your physician. And I don't suggest not taking that. But I find that there's a lot of ways that you can actually alleviate some stress related illnesses and some anxiety just through nature itself. So yes, that observation is 100%.
Great. Tina, so yeah, we still have quite a few questions. Are there any particular that stand out to you that you would like to field?
I'm not seeing the questions, so I don't know which ones those are. Like I said, I'm happy to have you pick some or pick a few. If not, my email is open for everyone and anyone on this call.
Great. There's a question from James.
Okay.
Do you have suggestions for incorporating biophilic design when you're working on, more mundane, conventional projects that you might otherwise not think to do so?
Yeah, so we do get in the habit of going through the motions. I think we get in habitual responses. We like to specify the same material it worked before. There were no problems. It's easy, right? So we'll just do that one over here. Maybe there's a different color. And then pretty soon you get in this mundane trap where it's no longer an exciting thing to wrap your brain around and think outside of the box. And you start to get in, kind of a rut in a way, and you start to get set in your ways. And I think that's when you need to shake it a little bit. So if you've got these mundane projects and I always say to show the client, the tried and true, of course, but I always like to start with, I know this is what you were looking for, but let me explain why I think introducing some of these elements to your project is going to be better for your business and for you and for, the people that are surrounded. Because let's be honest, if you have a project that has public that needs to come and visit, don't you want them to want to stay, want to be there, not want to leave, versus a project where people can't wait to get out? So the simplest way to do this is literally the direct response, incorporate obviously plants, but start to introduce color a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't come in there, with loud, dramatic movements, like all of a sudden your entire project goes from gray to magenta, but I would take your subtle, subdued colors and I would have one dramatic focal point. And is that going to be a chair? Is that going to be the floor? Is it a wall? Is it a pattern on the wall? Is it, a living wall? So start to incorporate so forth, but always maybe design something special and, give your client what you think your client's going to want, because that's going to be something you can do with your eyes closed. But I would work on a second one just to have in your back pocket. And I would bring it out saying, look, I know this isn't what we talked about, but let me show you why this brings about this and this. And I know this might be a lot to just all of a sudden jump into, but if you are willing to explore, let me work on incorporating these aspects into this. And that way together we can have a harmonious design. And it also shows that you care about your client, you care that, about the business, and you care in general. And I would do the extra mile. I've been one of these people that, even if you don't like every job you do it with perfection. You do it with 100% of what you have to give, because I personally can't think behind thinking, oh God, I should have done, or I should have done, or I could have done, or I would have done. If I can't do it 100% to where I give it everything I've got, as perfect as I can go, as perfect as my brain can expand to, then I have no regrets if something doesn't work out, and I can rest. I don't ever think back, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. That's something I personally, for me, can't do. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. It's not about the glass half full or half empty. It's really about being grateful you have a glass because you have possibilities. And your identity and bringing your idea to a mundane project might be one of the most impactful things that your client sees. You never know. And you may all of a sudden be the star that just outshines because you had an idea. And it does start with one. There's been some powerful changes in the world from one person starting a platform or an idea or a dream.
Thank you, Tina. That brings us to time. I'm going to give some closing words.
Great.
Thank you all so much for attending the live webinar, Biophilia and Bio-Inspired Design, a CE Strong webinar series powered by the Architects newspaper. This presentation was sponsored by ICG Italia. This webinar is recorded and can be easily replayed using the same registration link. Please allow 7 business days to process certificates of participation and AIA credit reporting for this presentation. A big thank you again to our presenter, Tina Bianchi, and to ICG Italia for sponsoring this webinar. We hope to see you all again at a future event. Have a great day.
Thank you. And our website has all sorts of articles that you can go on and read about. And any of our galleries, if you're in the area, please see them. The one in San Francisco is embodying biophilic in its design with direct and indirect strategies. So thank you all very much. I so appreciate your time.